Every action game has a varying degree of weapons and which ones are good, bad, ugly, and so on. And Hell Let Loose, this is no different. Hell Let Loose has a very wide array of guns from the Second World War that vary in terms of good, great, bad, but overall I'd say a lot of them are good. But there's a couple that I feel like stand out, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Hell Let Loose's top 5 weapons. At the end of the video, comment of what weapons you think are top 5 in Hell Let Loose, and potentially any other top 5 list you want to see. But let's get into the criteria that I have picked today for the weapons. Now I want to go over the criteria that was used to determine this list, as it is my personal opinion. A big one being effective range or time to kill, basically meaning what weapons do better against longer range targets, and how many shots does it take usually at range, and what guns can usually hit longer range targets a lot easier than other guns. This varies from, rifle, submachine gun, machine gun, so on. Recoil is also considered, ammo count in the magazine or clip, availability, meaning how many classes is the weapon available to and how many loadouts are the weapon a part of. Versatility, it kind of goes hand in hand with the effective range, where can the weapon be used effectively. And I did take a lot of the community's opinions into consideration, mostly seeing where they put their guns in their lists and what they considered was their top 5 guns, and seeing what guns had repeating trends. So that's just my criteria right there. Coming in number 5, we have the Thompson. Now, this gun feels good and does good in game. This thing has a 30-round mag and fires a 45mm ACP round. And its effective range for an SMG is pretty good, especially for the time. I'd argue 50 meters is a effective range for most SMGs, and the Thompson fits that decently. 2 shots, center mass, or chest will do the job most of the time within 50 meters. Now, we get into some of the bad though. Recoil is a little much, but I'd argue that its rate of fire makes up for it, or you can go accuracy by volume if necessary. The weapon itself can hit longer range targets with some accuracy, but you might need 3 shots to actually do the job at more than 50 meters. And if someone's shooting back at you with a rifle, this might be a problem. The other thing to consider is its availability, and this is where I think it does get a decent edge over most weapons in the game. The Thompson can be used in 7 different classes, varying from the commander to the officer to tank commander, assault, recon, and so on. And it's in 8 different class loadouts. So it's a pretty available gun, all things considered, and I think it earns its top 5 spot decently well, all things considered. At number 4, we have the MP40. Now, there's a lot of similarities with this compared to the Thompson, at least in terms of effective range and so on. But it does have a couple of differences that I think give it a slight edge, particularly in its ammo and its availability. The MP40 does have 2 more rounds in the mag compared to the Thompson at 32 versus 30, where it doesn't make as much of a difference even though it's shooting a smaller round. I'd argue its effective range is still 50 meters, but anything farther than that, its damage really drops off, and you really will notice this gun not doing as much damage. However, its availability is a lot better. The Thompson is in 7 classes and 8 loadouts, like I mentioned previously. The MP40 is in 9 classes and 9 loadouts, at least giving it the edge in terms of availability, with very little differences truly between it and the Thompson, at least by technicality. So that's where I put it at number 4. And overall, it's still not a bad gun, all things considered. At number 3, we have the trench gun or the shotgun. And this thing is super fun to use. And I think a lot of the community would agree with me on this one. This thing, starting off, has 6 rounds in total, 1 in the chamber, 5 in the reserve, and you have to pump every time you have a shot. It's not a semi-auto, it is a pump action. And this thing is satisfying to use even at range. I'd argue the effective range of the trench gun is 70 to 75 meters to get reliable one-taps on most of your opponents. And even if you're at range at this, or 75 meters or more, even if you hit them, as you see on screen now, chances are the second shot will do the trick, which is just as good, if not better, than an SMG. And this thing makes it really fun to use. And if you're up close and personal, you can blow apart the enemy with one shot. And I mean, when I mean blow them apart, I mean it'll look like a grenade hit them. It is that satisfying. But its only drawback, I'd say, is its versatility and availability. In versatility, it only can do short to mid-range targets. And in availability, there's only two classes you can use this for the Americans, the Engineer and the Assault class, and there's only two loadouts for it. So it is a little lacking in that department. But its damage numbers and its effective range makes this way too good to pass up, and I do put ahead of basically all the SMGs in the game, so that's why it gets its number 3 spot. Coming at number 2, we have the Gewehr 43 and the SVT 40 in a tie. Because in terms of gameplay, these guns are exactly the same. I can't really put one above the other. Maybe on technicality I could, but for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to put them at the same because their differences are very minuscule. For instance, they both have 10-round mags, and they shoot basically the same round for the most part. And their availability is pretty much the same. The Gewehr does have a slight edge in this department, where being is in 4 classes and 5 different class loadouts, and the SVT is in 4 classes with 4 loadouts. Other than that, though, its recoil is about the same. The sights are pretty good. They both feel decent. The recoil is about the same. And they excel at the semi-automatic rifle roll. And they are very good against, well, basically anything that comes up against at short range, mid-range, and long range. And its effective range mimics that. Usually, at most ranges past 100 meters, it's going to be a two-tap, but that's expected. But at anything below that, you're most likely going to get a one-tap if you're hitting the enemy in the chest or center mass area. So with all that in mind, the Gewehr 43 and SVT 40 are taking the number 2 spot. Now, I do want to give some shout-outs to some honorable mentions. Firstly, we'll start off with the STG 44 and the BAR, respectively. Now, I wanted to put the STG 44 on the list, but the more I thought about it, the more it really, unfortunately, is just short of the list. The STG 44 is a very good gun, do not get me wrong, and again, I wanted to put it on the list. But its main problem that it really stems from is its lack of availability. There's only 2 classes you can get this gun, and for one of them you have to be level 9, and that's for the Assault class. Compare that to the BAR, which it is better than, at least in terms of ammo capacity and rate of fire. The BAR is in the Machine Gunners class and the Automatic Rifleman class, where to get both of those guns, you need to be level 3. So, with that retrospect, it was kind of hard to put the STG ahead of the BAR in some cases, but then the BAR ahead of the STG. So, I figured, unfortunately, the SMGs probably take the priority here, especially with their availability, their rate of fire, and for what they bring to the table. The other gun I'd like to mention is the PPSH SMG. This thing is very nice as well. And the PPSH has, combined with its box mag and drum mag availabilities, has over 9 classes, or 9 total classes between the two that the gun associates with, and 12 different loadouts that you can equip with a PPSH with either a drum mag or a box mag. The rate of fire on the PPSH is very nice, but the problem with the PPSH that I have is also its availability, but in the sense of the Russian front maps are not as plentiful, and a lot of people seem to despise the Russian front maps. Now, on console, we don't really have a choice to the map we play unless we want to leave the server. With the PC version, if I remember correctly, you guys do have a server picker, which you guys probably can work around, and you guys can pick what map you wish to play next, as far as I know. Which, with how unpopular the Russian front maps are to some people, I can see where these weapons don't really get played as much, and compared to the MP40 and the Thompson, where you're going to see those a lot more on the battlefield because there's just a lot more Western front maps that people like, it just makes the PPSH kind of lower than the other 2 SMGs I've mentioned on this list. So, but it's not that these are bad guns. They're just have different circumstances for them, and I really considered putting them on this list. But I've already talked enough about that. let's get into the number one pick that's probably going to trigger a lot of people and probably make a lot of people happy at the same time. And the number one spot for the How It Lose top 5 weapons in the game goes to the M1 Garand. I can already potentially see debates going on in the comments sections, and I actually welcome that. Because you know what? I want to hear some opinions on this. But if there's some things I can say about this gun, it is that it is a very good gun in every aspect that I have named in the criteria. The M1 Garand only has one downside compared to its competition. And that is its ammo count in the gun when you load its clip. The M1 Garand has 8-round bandolier clips compared to the G43 and the SVT-40 having 10-round magazines. But I think this is made up by its availability. The M1 Garand can be found in 5 different classes and 6 different loadouts. You're going to find this thing in the hands of more U.S. soldiers than G43s in the hands of the German army. And I think that's where it does make up the difference. Also, the recoil is pretty good, all things considered. The sights are good for getting targets in your sights and hitting them, although the sights are unrealistic, but that's a historical thing, not a gameplay reason I can complain at. And overall, it's very satisfying to use. It feels like you're doing damage to the target, and you are. Everything about this gun is very good. And who can forget that awesome ping sound when the bandolier comes out of the gun? That's the defining factor, you know? This gun can do everything the Gewehr 43 and SVT can do, and that's why it gets the top spot, especially since it has a better availability. Now, the one thing I'll admit, looking back on this video, is I get the availability bit isn't everything, but I feel like in the grand scheme of things, it does make up the difference for certain weapons, and I could go on about firepower this, firepower that, and how everyone feels about certain weapons, but there had to have been some sort of other criteria for these guns, and that's just what I decided to go with. All things I could think of. But let me know in the comments what you think, what you agree with, disagree with, what your top 5 would be, and maybe what videos you'd want to see next. Do you want to see another top 5 video? Let me know in the comments. I got some more videos coming out, and I hope you enjoyed this one. I hope you enjoy more in the future. Till next time, take care.